Welcome to HitPointsGaming. My name is Corey, and in today's episode I'm going to be covering a game known as Lawyer Up, published by Rock Manor Games, which is going to be coming to Kickstarter on March 17th. I was able to get my hands on a prototype copy, so again, not everything here is final, but it is pretty close. I will be giving kind of a brief overview of how the game's played, and then my thoughts or review of the game. But if you are interested after this and want to check out a full playthrough, I know on our channel Chris and Becky performed that, so definitely go ahead and check that out if you're interested. So, in Lawyer Up, which is a two-player game, each player takes on the role of either the plaintiff or defense in a courtroom case. The base game comes with two cases. One's kind of like an introductory case with like stolen art, and the second one happens to be a murder case, and that's the one I was able to play, and I'll showcase some of the pieces today here for you, some of the cards. So let's jump in, and I will give you kind of a high-level overview of how the game is played. Here's the typical setup of one of the scenarios in Lawyer Up. Each side's going to have their standard deck. I believe it's of like 26 cards. And in here, there's two different types of cards that you're going to see. You're going to have arguments and you're going to have procedures. And at the top of the cards is going to be two critical elements. There's going to be a value in the upper left-hand corner, which is going to be your influence, which is what you're going to be trying to do as you play cards on your turn to influence the witnesses that are currently on the stand. Whoever has played the most influence at the end of during examination is going to gain that witness card and be able to persuade your 12 jurors that are on the case. So this is going to be the same for every case that you play for each side, but what's really important is depending on the case, you're going to get a whole separate deck. So this is that murder case that I was talking about, and in here are going to be so many different cards that pertain to the case itself. And this is where you're going to get a lot of the lore and the theme out of this game. So there's going to be cards here that give influence to the plaintiff. Some of them are going to be just neutral, and some of them are going to be on the defense. So just like any case, one of the most important things leading up to it, I talk like I'm actually a lawyer, but I'm not, but I hear that one of the most important things is the pretrial. And that's when you go and you try and gather all your information on the witnesses, on any additional evidence, and that's what you do here. You kind of do this drafting system where you shuffle this deck up, each player is going to draw 3 cards, and then they're going to decide which card they're going to keep, which one they're going to give to their opponent, and then which card are they actually going to bury. So this is like burying evidence. So there's going to be ways to pull this card back into the game. Maybe there's a piece of evidence that you want to hide. This is how you do this. So there's going to be a lot of pieces of information here that may not be played in your game, and it's all determined right here in the pretrial. So it does take some time to go through the deck of all these cards and draft it, but that's okay. There's actually a lot of fun here. I know when I was playing, there's cards here that I didn't even know about. And that was really half the fun, kind of exploring that and seeing, and adds to the replayability of the game, not just on your playing through it the first time. So once this is added, everyone's deck's going to be obviously a little bit bigger. You're going to shuffle this up, and each side's going to start with 5 cards. Then, depending on the specific case, you may receive additional cards. So as the plaintiff, you're going to receive the bloody knife to start in your hand, as obviously the murder weapon, and the defense is going to start with Jessica Fairmont. So she's the defendant that the defense may want to call to the stand, but you don't have to. That's what's pretty cool. So the prosecution won't be able to question her or bring her to the stand unless the defense decides to. And there's reasons why and why you wouldn't want to bring her forward. So not only during the pre-trial and drafting those cards, each side is going to pick a strategy. Kind of how they're going to build their case. So for the defense, you've got strategy of defense, an innocent woman, and eyewitness testimony, and illicit affairs. Now, each one of these serves a purpose. Right? You'll see here all these different symbols. There's 6 symbols in the game, and they represent kind of the different emotions or things that the jury is looking for. So you're kind of playing to those, I guess, kind of what sways the jury. So if I wanted to take this strategy of, believe this is facts and evidence and bureaucratic strategy here, I'm going to want to play certain cards that are going to help me out here. And this helps, well, this actually determines what witnesses are going to come to the stand. So the defense has 4, where I believe the plaintiff brings 5 witnesses to the case. So once that's determined, you're going to bring your 9 witnesses that are going to sit around the judge just like this. And here are all the witnesses in case 1. So again, replayability right here. It's all determined on the strategy that each side is going to take. So I'll just put a few out here for an example. I'll move over here. This is going to be the 12 jurors that are, of course, a part of this case. And you'll see the same symbols that we were just discussing. So the top row starts a little bit in favor of the prosecution, and the bottom row is a little bit in favor of the defense. So as you're playing cards, which I'll get to next, you're trying to gain influence points, so at the end of winning a witness, you're going to be able to spend those points and start swaying the jury after every witness. After all 9 witnesses have gone up, then there's going to be one final step where you can make this persuasion, and the prosecution will win if all of them are on the prosecution side. The defense will win if just one of the jurors is siding with the defense. It sounds pretty hard for the plaintiff to win. I was able to pull it off, let's say. It was pretty cool how this works. And as soon as I was finished, I wanted to go ahead and jump into the defense. But I'm jumping a little ahead here with my review, I think only because I'm excited about this game. But yeah, let me dial it back real quick. So let's say the plaintiff is going to start first because the judge is in favor of the plaintiff. So they're going to call the first person to the stand, and they're going to call Officer Murphy. So this is the officer who found the defendant standing over his father, emotionless and covered in blood. So yeah, I want to call her to stand. So I'm going to orientate her to myself. So I'm going to gain 3 influence right off the bat. And the defense is going to start, because there's a neutral token here, our neutral side, either player can gain this influence. So the defense is going to start with 1 influence. Now, you can keep track of that influence on this dial, which I found was very helpful as you're going throughout your questioning of the witness. And this can change, obviously, very easily as you're going through all your cards during examination. So I'm calling out Officer Murphy here. And then as the prosecutor, just right off the bat, I'm going to throw out, where'd that knife go? Let's say I'm going to throw out the murder weapon here. Now, in order for me to actually play this card, I have to have the symbols along the top, or one of the symbols, match, which is on my officer right here. So because the officer right here can be factual, I'm going to be able to play the bloody knife like such. And I'm going to gain 5 additional influence. So now I'm going to be up to 8, which is a really good start. And that's one of my actions. So it's going to go back and forth between prosecution and defense to play one action. And like I just showed you, playing a piece of evidence is an action. I can also play an argument card, which I showed you before. So here's an argument card. And when I play this, again, I might gain some influence, but I have to make sure the symbols match. And there's going to be a kind of like a special rule here that comes into play during examination. So this one specifically says cancel the primary value of the witness. So, because of course I'm discrediting the witness, right? So say I wanted to play this on a witness that was really helping the defense out. I would want to play this card to cancel that primary value, right? And what would happen is I would play that down, and that would be my turn. So I could play an argument, I could play an evidence card, and I'm going to jump ahead real quick to show you the other type of standard card is a procedure. Procedures can be played in one of 2 ways. One, you can just play them in your examination board like such, because they act as a wild. So it's really going to set me up for future turns, because you'll see here any single icon at the top allows me to play off of that. Or what they're really used for is the special action that's on the bottom. So I can play a procedure card kind of face up down here. It doesn't count towards my victory points or influence points, but this is a 0 anyway. But on a future turn, I can use this special action that's here on the bottom, which I've seen things where maybe you call like a like a new witness to the stand, so I would replace the officer and I would draw from the top of the deck and maybe bring in a new witness. So a lot of powerful abilities that you can use with these procedures, but you have to set them up that way. So I can do procedures, arguments, an evidence card. You can also, on your turn, flip this sidebar token, because you're basically exhausting it, and it allows you to draw an additional card in your hand. So you start with 5 cards in your hand. Cards are very important because there's really no other way to draw more, and that's really how you're going to be building your case or your questioning during the examination of each witness. So cards are very powerful, right? So I would play a card, then it would go over to the defense side. They would go ahead and play one of their cards, maybe like a DNA analysis, right? Because it does match our officer here. I would play this. I would get 2 influence, and as you're playing this game, the flavor text on the cards is really important. Well, that's how I really got drawn into the game, because I can kind of make a story up. As Andrea and I were playing this game, she was the defense, and she was reading things like this with DNA, like, oh, you know, yeah, that blood that you found on the bloody knife that you just played down, turns out the my defendant here, blood wasn't on that knife because I ran this test. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's a pretty good point. And so the jury is taking all this into account. Now, once everyone has played all their cards and you pass as an action, you can't play any more cards at that point, you're going to total up the number of influence for each player, and whoever has the highest amount gains this witness, which is going to be very important for that final case, for the final verdict at the end. But the difference then allows you to sway the jury, as I mentioned earlier. Now, how you sway them is by paying the value of each juror. So these jurors here have a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if I won by, let's say, 3 points of influence, I can move this person over for 2 points and this here for 1. Right? So you're trying to sway them over to your side. It's just these actually cost 6 points of influence. So that takes a lot of persuading to do, unless you play certain cards, like this one right here, that DNA. Not only is there an examination, that's what happens when you play the card, but if you actually win at the end, meaning this is the last card played and it's face up, because you can see as you're playing cards, they kind of block out the victory of the previous ones you played. If this is face up and you actually won, it says that I can sway 1 bureaucratic or 1 logical juror. So let's see, well, right here, here's a bureaucratic juror. It's worth 4 influence. I can just sway that, while as a defense, I would sway it this way. Right? So there's ways to also adjust these tokens, not just by doing the influence, by gaining victory at the bottom of the card. And I think it also shows at the bottom of the witness, there's victory. So if the prosecution wins with Officer Murphy, yeah, there's a way for me to sway one of the biases here. It does mention here, which I will show, some scenarios have special rules. So this actually allows you to sway or lock 1 bias. So on the flip side here, you'll see that there's actually a locking mechanism. So I can lock that in as the prosecution, and now the defense can't actually move this down unless they have the unlock ability. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through all 9 witnesses, unless there's a special rule that may end the case earlier. And then at the end, you're going to tally up all of the witness cards that you actually gained or won, and see if they matched that strategy card that you built your case on. So for every symbol of a witness that you have that matches this, you're going to gain 5 influence. So you're going to total up at the very end, you know, one side might have 35, the other side might have 20. The difference is 15. That side's going to have 15 points to, again, sway the jury one last time. Now, again, that's very important for the defense, because all they need to do is sway 1 juror. So really, if the defense built a strong case and have 1 witness, or 5 more influence at the very end, they're going to be able to move that top juror down a few spots, because it's only going to cost maybe 2 points, and you win, right? So the defense just needs 1 person to be on your side, where the prosecution needs to build them up, hopefully lock them in, and set them there. Because at the end, you can even unlock people. So that was kind of tough. So that's kind of the rules of how this game's played. The one other special thing that I want to bring up is these tokens right here. These are going to be your objection tokens, which is really sharp. You start with 3 of them in the game, and at any time in the case, well, really once per juror, you can object to your opponent's any argument or procedure card, and they have to play another card. So just another way of, wow, that card's giving you a lot of influence. Objection, get rid of it, and you got to move on. So knowing when to play that is really important. Knowing when to switch out what witnesses, which witnesses do you call to the stand, how do you set your hand up to kind of play off of the different chains that you need to deliver. Because again, if you're delivering the correct chain, you're building up your influence, you're getting a lot, you're going to sway the juror based on the witness that you have on the stand. So before I go into my final review, I just want to give a kind of an overview of some of the additional cards. So in that deck, that extra deck for the case, there's such things as like the security system logs. You've got the red stained dress. You're gonna have, I already showed you the DNA one. Here's one like charity work. So the defense is basically saying, oh, you know, she performed all this charity. I'm kind of building this case towards emotional and I forget what the thumbs up one is. Immoral, or if you're immoral or not, you can build that case, and maybe that's going to help out. Maybe that's a juror that you want to persuade, so you kind of go down that road. And then you're going to have some neutral cards, like I mentioned. It's only going to be helpful, well, it's going to be helpful for either side, but this is like a checkered past. So maybe this is good for the prosecution, maybe it's going to be good for the defense, depending on who gets the card and who plays it. So if you're thinking that's a lot, it actually is. There's not so many rules, and it was pretty simple once I actually started it and played it and saw the cards and saw what was in my hand, because I really only have 5 cards to build my case for that witness. Kind of know what my chain is, then I start going. Now, of course, that's going to depend on what my opponent does, what they play. Maybe they stop some of my cards. That's fine. They might claim that witness. I might not want to play some of my best cards out right away. And you have the option at the end of each witness to discard all your cards or keep some, and then draw up to your hand side of 5 to set up for the next round, right? So you really have to think about which witness is important for you in building your case. And that's what I really did enjoy about this game. It wasn't difficult to know the rules, but it was difficult to plan my strategy in a really good way. And throughout the entire case, as we're playing our cards, it made thematic sense. We built our own story on this case. Now, as soon as I was finished as the prosecution, we ended, I wanted to play as the defense right away to see how I could build the story in my way, right? Why she's not the murderer, and emotionally, here's why. Boom, 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 playing all these cards. And now I'm going to have different cards in that pretrial that may or may not come out. Is there an additional murder weapon that I can throw out there? Is there some evidence on that security camera that I caught? Or maybe there's a past with my father that came into play. So again, the replayability in this is really high, and then I feel that it's going to be completely different when you switch roles. The downside to this game, you may think, there's cards, it's pretty quick. It's fairly long. Now, I say that's a downside to some people. To me, it's not. I felt really engrossed in this game. This took about an hour and a half. You'll see, I think in the playthrough that Chris and Becky played, it might have been around 2 hours. Now, I'm sure it's going to be quicker as you're playing through it. You know the cards, you know the rules. But I really wouldn't want to rush this. I like building out that story. And at the end of the case, you know, we talked about it. Andrew and I went for a walk, and we're like, oh, remember when this happened? Yeah, we were talking about the game. It was really sharp. And to get that out of, you know, a few deck of cards, and you're reading the lore on cards. So in a lot of games, I really don't read a lot of the lore. It's there. It's really nice. You know, this all started back with Magic the Gathering, where they had lore on the cards. Like, that's cool. This pulls it all together in an excellent way. I'm very interested in all the different cases that can come out of this. I believe there's going to be a Salem witch trial. I think there's a prohibition case that's going to be added to this, all with different rules and story to it. So that I think is a thumbs up and one of the best things about Lawyer Up. I think the rules are really simple, they're tight, they're different things that you can do without going, you know, out of control, and just how you can change that up with each case that gets implemented into this game. So we thoroughly enjoyed Lawyer Up. We're looking forward to the launch of it on Kickstarter, again on March 17th, and whatever cases that they're going to be introducing at that point. So if you are interested in seeing more, please check out that playthrough of Chris and Becky. I do not know who won that, so I'm going to have to check it out myself and see how their case differed from ours. So once again, that's Lawyer Up, coming to Kickstarter on March 17th. This is Corey signing off from HitPointsGaming. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you next time.